Welcome to episode 33. Check out what we have in store for you this week.
Yeah, well, we sometimes talk about education on this podcast. I don't know if you know that.
Boring. But I'd like to just say it's kind of like Canva if Canva and a quiz had a baby.
Why have we gotten this perspective that, like, making it easier for people to get a hold of the things that they need to learn well is hand-holding? Yo, 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 it's another high-tech podcast episode, and I'm never doing yo, yo, yo ever again. That was dumb.
I felt like I needed to put in a fourth one or something, like just to make it a yo, 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 yo.
Maybe. I felt like I needed to not be who I am to do yo, yo, yo. But you were joined by me, Josh Swartz, who does not do yo-yo-yos on an average basis and should never do them again for an episode, so I'm going to stop doing that and saying it and talking about it. And then joined by my wonderful co-host, the Illingworth.
Okay,
Will.
Keep trying. Keep trying.
I think I've tried that one before. I feel like that one should take off.
You should call me fine. Sir Hits Mike a lot, because that's all I do is hit my microphone.
That's true, except that's like the lamest thing I've ever heard, so I'm not going to do that.
After he just said the Illingworth.
In my defense, it's cooler than Sir Hits Mike a lot. It's like a third grader came up with that nickname. It's like when we've talked about this before, when they had a third grade class or something in Britain, try to name a submarine or something, and they named it Bodie McBoatface. This is a real thing.
Oh, I missed that.
It's a real
That's
thing.
amazing.
There's a military vessel named Bodie McBoatface.
Oh, I love that. I'm all about it.
Due to a third grade class. I don't know if it was actually third grade, but it was an elementary school class who named it Bodie McBoatface, and they're my heroes. So
deep respect.
Yeah. Deep respect.
Yeah, folks, we are 5 days into spending time with each other, I think, at this point, Josh and I.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of each other recently.
And our wives and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. We all just went to the Poconos, the mountains, for the weekend. And we're not tired of each other yet, so we decided to do another podcast episode.
Yeah, why not do a podcast episode? Well, at least we're not tired of each other yet. But we were texting today, because we do those things. And I want to get a Lord of the Rings chess set in case anybody was curious. Aside from that, though, so we were up in a cabin in the woods. I think I found the town where Fall was born. That's my opinion.
Yep.
We were at Jim Thorpe, which was if it sounds like a weird town name, it is. It was cool, it was interesting. It's like a weird, I think I kept talking and I was glad everybody kind of, latched onto it, that whenever I go into weird little towns like this, where everybody else is like, oh, it's so cute, it's like a Hallmark movie. I'm like, this is like a horror movie. There's a cult with a portal to Hades below here.
If you just find the right basement, there's going to be a little pentagram in the corner. Yes. You push it.
Or they've been sacrificing outsiders to the woods for decades. Right. And that's why they have this cool little town.
People only enter Jim Thorpe. They don't leave.
They never leave. Yes. But we were hanging out and we did a lot of fires, I would say. I think we were good. We had some issues with fires throughout the weekend.
They did not go as smoothly as one might expect or hope.
So here's the thing. We brought fire starters. We bought logs, but we did not bring kindling.
And there was none.
We do this all the time when we go to these cabin trips. We always forget that piece. And we really struggled with the fire. The logs we had were, as I called them, broken.
Yeah.
It was an experience.
You just think, hey, I'm going to the mountains. There'll be wood. There'll be kindling. There'll be things to burn. Alas, in this context, there was none, and it made things very difficult.
You know what there was? A mailbox in the middle of the woods. That's what was there.
Not even any context to it. Just
no, it was at the back of the house.
Yep. Not
and
near
you know
a
what
street.
happened when we asked our Airbnb people what that was? He goes, "Oh, that was here before we moved here." Yeah, that's not what I want to hear.
Yep.
That's
where the cults, cult followers leave all their messages for one another. That's all.
Yeah, leave their mail because you can't do it in public. So. Anyway, we did some fires, we did some stuff, which spawns our fun question of the day, which is, what's our favorite fireside activity?
Yeah.
Will, which one did you enjoy the most out of the weekend?
I mean, just in general, I really enjoy fire tending, right? So, I like a s'more, but it's not like I don't have a s'more every time we get the s'more stuff out. You know what I mean? I'm not like dying for s'mores. Scary stories, I got nothing. Like, I don't know them. I don't care for them.
We didn't really do that at all over the weekend.
But like, I just out of the typical firesides, I just love playing with the fire and like talking. You know what I mean? It's just nice and simple. Make things hot, make things burn. Try not to hurt myself, which I usually end up doing, as is my, style.
Yeah, he has a Band-Aid on his head right now, for those of you who don't know.
Not from the fire.
Not from the fire. We had an indoor fireplace as well.
Yep.
And Will went up to get up some firewood and may have ran into the dumbest stairs I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah. I just was just, like, in my head, I just like, I need more firewood. I just like said, I just stood right up and went for the firewood. Like, that was the brain process. Need firewood, stand, walk. And I wish I had put something in between stand and walk, because I would have stopped and looked and seen that there were stairs in front of me, and I would not have gouged a huge chunk out of my forehead.
Yeah, it's fine. It all worked out.
Eventually.
Nothing burned down. Yeah, eventually. I don't know. I would like my favorite activity. I'm not a huge s'more guy either, Like, I like the ingredients of s'mores.
Yes.
I don't like the effort in making them.
Or the stickiness of them.
I'll just eat the chocolate bar. I'm kind of lame that way. Scary stories. Didn't really tell them. For those of you, if it sounds like we're going through a list, it's because we are. I did enjoy some hot cider. We had some good cider that had a little extra fun in it, which was good. I feel like that was a good thing. I don't know. I'd probably say like a cider, like lighting things on fire. I like burning things too.
Yeah.
So
good.
I feel like that's kind of my go-to.
Yeah.
You also have hot dogs on here, but we didn't do that at all. That was we didn't do like burgers or hot dogs.
I know. We have done that at my place before, right? Didn't you all come over?
Yeah.
We did dinner on my fire pit.
I think so.
I've done it before.
We've done before.
Yeah. I just think like a fire is a pretty nice activity, but it has its own ups and downs, and like I think there's a lot you can do to it. Some people like did camps every summer, and they told all the stories around them. I don't know. I never did that. My biggest thing with fires is making them, lighting them on fire, enjoying that process, trying not to burn my eyebrows off. Like, that is my activity around fires.
Occasionally, putting a Capri Sun in the fire. That's an enjoyable thing. So,
yeah. Pop.
Yeah. It boils and then it shoots the liquid out of the straw. It's really fun.
Oh. All right.
This is a thing that you should do if you've never done it. Anybody listening, go take a Capri Sun, put the straw in it first, put the bottom end towards the fire, not like in the fire so it melts, but like towards the fire, and it eventually heats up the Capri Sun and shoots it out of the straw.
Okay.
It's super great, and a total waste of a Capri Sun, but it's awesome.
It's a science experiment. Well, that really can enhance the experience of the fire, right?
It could, yeah. It could enhance, I guess, the experience.
Much like something else we want to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we sometimes talk about education on this podcast. I don't know if you know that.
Boring.
And there's a thing we want to talk about: enhancing learning.
Yes.
In a way, which is kind of like our thing that we like to talk about, but we want to, I think, talk about something specifically, which is how can your course site enhance your learning?
Much like how a Capri Sun can enhance your fireside experience. So,
yes, exactly.
If you are trying to maybe take in context what this means, we're just trying to say like a course site. So if you have a learning management system at your institution, which is like 9.9 out of 10 institutions these days.
If you don't, you're living in a cave. Let's just be real right now.
It is more likely that you have some kind of course site available to you to deliver your learning. Now, before COVID, I would have said it was probably more hit or miss, right? Before COVID, you did not need to have a course site to teach your course. You might have gotten away with never having a course site. Didn't have a place to put your syllabus online. You didn't do any quizzes online. You actually might have still taught physically face-to-face. And then COVID hit. And I think at least every instructor has now seen one of these things. They may not have used them well or wanted to use them or whatever, right? But you've probably had an experience where you know that you have some sort of course site available to you in a learning management system, some sort of website.
Yeah, absolutely. And we use the term course site. I don't know if other institutions use this. Did you use it when you were at your other institution? Like, is that what you called them? Course sites?
No, probably just like your class in the LMS. Like, I don't know that I would have referred to it this way. And I do want to make the point that like a course site, before the learning management system, I know people who have like written websites as their course, right? Like you wrote a website, you used a blog, like that could really be anything that could kind of complement your course. But my point, I guess, about bringing up about COVID and all that is that today, I think everybody's got experience with some kind of course site, whether it's in your LMS and it's just like you get given a course, your students are in there, you've got a grade book, etc. Or if you're, those Wild West folks that make their own, like literally code their own site or come up with their own product or something like that, right? Like that's all a course site. And you don't necessarily need to be teaching a fully online class to have a course site. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I was going
absolutely.
with it.
That's a good addendum there, because there are other things that classify as like a course site. Essentially, we're talking about like the digital space that you put learning content.
Yep.
Right? So like for most of us, that's a learning management system. For some of you, that's a website. For others of you, that's like your corporate learning management system that you use, or you've went crazy and created some type of SCORM file and uploaded it on a server somewhere. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then that's not you, and it's okay. And you do the same thing and use other stuff. But the key is like, why are these useful? So I feel like the question that you spawned this for us, obviously we're both in this field, so like we have opinions about why we think digital spaces for education are helpful.
Right.
But I'll get these instructors who like they don't see the use of it. Like it's basically just a thing they put, like they resource dump on it, and that's basically what it's useful for. And if you're teaching an online course, then it's a necessity. But if you're not, I don't really need it. And they're not wrong. I mean, you don't need it per se, but can it make the learning experience better no matter what type of teaching you're doing?
Yeah.
Whether it's online, blended, a hybrid format, blog formatting, like whether it's your face-to-face teaching, like I think a learning management system can help enhance any of those experiences depending on how you use it, depending on how you use that site or that digital space. And so I guess like that's the question that we're really asking is, how can that enhance it?
Right.
And I think that's a great question. So thank you for asking us, and we're going to talk about it now.
We're ready. We're on the spot. I don't know. Our notes kind of make it almost too clear. Like I like our notes and we're going to follow them, of course. But like there's something to the fact.
I hate them. I'm going to diverge from them.
Of course, contrarian.
No, just
I think there's just something to the fact that like considering that if you have a course site, that in and of itself is giving you a leg up in the modern education space, right? If you are talking COVID-19 and the pandemic and not necessarily being able to see all your students face to face, or students quarantine and come into it, I mean, at this point, you just have to have something digital. I don't know if you're an instructor who is making it without a digital presence in this era of education. I kind of want to hear from you. I want to know how you're doing it.
Yeah.
But
and then we'll tell you how you're not really making it.
Hey,
but it's
who knows if they could manage to do it. I'm willing to be impressed. But our point being, if you've got to have one of these things, just putting up a picture of yourself, even if not that, just putting up your syllabus, like that's not necessarily, enough. Like there's plenty of things you can do with them. And I really hope that if you're considering making your course site better, or if you already use it and you want to find new ways to use it, or if you're still a little resistant after, the way you're forced to use it because of COVID-19, I really hope that you'll consider like the general premise that it's useful and it can help reach students where they are. It can help you be more organized, you be more effective, etc. But the points we've got to share today that I think will really, bring it home pretty clearly what it can do for you, right? It's meant to make your job and your life easier on an administrative level. I think the course site, the learning management system, should always be working for you and making your practice easier. If it's not doing that, I think you're doing something wrong or you got a bad system. You know what I mean? There's some split there.
Yeah. Well, and I want to take 2 points to what you said before we get into like our outlining content. One, I think there's you're highlighting something that is the mentality of faculty coming into this that I would take issue with, which is basically like, well, if I have to use it, here's how I use it. Hold on a second, okay? Like yes, okay. Most of your institutions, like mine that I work at, are telling you have to use it. But like, let's step back for a second and just realize, like, okay, I would like to argue with what we're talking about here. It's not that you have to use it, it's that you get to use it and that it can enhance it. That it's not just some tool that we're given and we have to end up using it. I'm not necessarily saying you're saying that, but
I got you.
We deal with that all the time. And I think that's the beginning problem that a lot of faculty have. They come with this mentality of, I have to use this. It's like, well, I mean, you get to. Like a part of it be like, I'm sorry, I know it's an inconvenience that it auto calculates the grades for you. But like, you know,
how horrible.
How horrible it's doing all that math for you. But like and I'm just being sarcastic. I know that it can be burdensome for those of you who don't know technology as well.
Yeah.
And then I will make this one comment. The other thing I try to get faculty to see is that while I do agree with you, Will, that at the end of the day, it should be hopefully making the job of instructors easier. I don't think that's always the intended purpose of a learning management system or a technology like this. It's actually to make the students' experience better. And so I do think that's the other thing that helps me mentally change how I come to the product, is that at the end of the day, I think any good LMS is designed, or digital space is actually designed well for the student first, and then hopefully second is designed well for the instructor.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean it's always going to make your life easier, because that's a failed promise. It's not. And I don't care what system you use. It's not going to make your life perfectly easier. If you don't like using technology, it's not going to make your life easier.
That's fair.
I'm just going to be blunt. And you know what? It's not there to do that. It's to make your students' experience better. It's a tool that you can use. Now, I do think there's a lot of stuff technology in the LMS can do to make your life easier as an instructor. That just doesn't mean it's going to magically work the way you want it to. So that's my disclaimer before we start talking about all of this, because those are the two mentalities I take issue with from faculty. Is I feel like we come in thinking I have to use it, and two, this thing's here for me. And at the end of the day, it's actually not here for you. It's for your students. But it can help you do things that you couldn't even imagine to do without it. So there we go. Oh. That's it. We can go back to the fun outline. Yeah, that's my soapbox.
You've got it. So I'm going to follow us right down the list here. One of the things that it doesn't even have to be a well set up, but I would like to say a well set up course site should make the learning path clear for you and the students, right? If you know what your syllabus says for the assignments you expect, the readings you expect, etc., and you hopefully have a course schedule, like that should be, week 1 to week 15, pretty clear how that should work out. Mm-hmm. But the learning management system, a course site, gives you space to put in everything. You can put in day 1, day 2, day 3. You don't have to build out every single day's worth of experiences, but you have the functionality to put in everything that is expected that makes sense and isn't too burdensome for your course path, right? So in that way, I think it's really helpful. Like in my positions previously as an instructional technologist, instructional designer, if somebody would come to me and was like, "Hey, Will, I'm trying to review my course. I really think I'm having an issue with my midterm, blah, blah, blah." I would be able to first thing say, "Let me take a look at your course itself and just walk through the narrative," right? Like start in week 1 and see where we get to week 15 and what happened in between there. Maybe the issue you're experiencing in your midterm exam is because something the week before it is not setting the students up for success. So it's just really easy when you lay the course out in a learning management system in a course site to see if it makes sense, if it works, if it's not too much, if it's not too little. All that becomes, I think, really real when you put it into the system like that.
Well, there's an important point you're getting at, which is that you're, making the learning path clear is this piece of you're actually creating an environment that they go through learning in.
Yeah.
And yes, okay, your classroom's an environment. This is an environment, but that's literally visually there in front of them. And there's something different about that. That's what I like about websites and about digital content, is you're creating an experience for people when they come through. It's either a good or bad experience, and we've had plenty of both. And the reason I get jazzed about technology and learning and this idea of learning design and all of this stuff coming together is because there's really powerful ways you can leverage technology to help enhance learning for students.
Yeah.
And so you get to create that. One of the things I think we've been thinking about in our space is this idea of really the LMS being your course site being an interactive textbook in ways that like you're coming through, they come to this activity. And I love this question. Aside here, I always get this question when I first start talking to people about doing this type of stuff. And they're like, well, why do I have to put all this information here? It's in my syllabus. It's like, yes, okay, that's true. But your syllabus is this static document. Now, we've talked about interactive syllabi and HTML syllabi and all that stuff. That's a whole nother conversation. Go listen to that episode. I think you and I eventually came to the conclusion we were like, we have an LMS. I don't know if I really need it.
Right.
And so like, but like what you can create, like you said, is you don't have to do day by day, but think about it this way. If you meet twice a week, what is the stuff that happens between the first class and the second class that they have to do? Okay. And let's slot that out in the LMS. And then they come to the activity, they get the instructions, they get maybe video content from you, some interactive content. Maybe you can reference back to a lecture that you did in class or whatever that is, link out to a resource that you talked about in class, have them review it. They submit that work. They get all of it in the spot that they need it at the time. Right. And that's where things are different than a syllabus. Where a syllabus is just like, here's the week calendar, here's the resource here, find this document, find this thing. Instead, the interactive piece of the LMS can say, well, here's all the stuff you need. You need it here now at this exact moment. Take a look at this, then do this. And it guides them through that experience.
Right.
In a way that is very visual and noticeable and readable in a way that you don't get in other places. And that's why I get really excited about that stuff, because if you put that together well, it can enhance kind of this almost, me being the religious person I am, this liturgical feeling of kind of walking through learning
Sure.
on this clear path that leverages, and that piece can be used whether it's online course, it's a hybrid course, it's a course you're teaching in class. There's other pieces that are enhancing the outside of what they do outside of that class, for instance, that can enhance what's happening in there. Right. Or even all the resources you need for that class day. How about instead of just handing them out like we still live in the 90s, and which was not long ago, I know. How about we actually have all those resources and things in there for the students to be able to quickly access and save and get to, and you don't even have to worry about taking up time handing out things. You can just be like, open up our in-class activity section of the course and, click on this and open this and take a look at this.
Well, and
it's all there for them.
That's, Josh getting us right on the second point in our list is like the first bullet point's, I think, an amalgamation. If you make the learning path clear, meaning what do you do day 1 or day 2 or week 1, week 2, and in what order do you do it and what materials do you... Well, in doing that, you're probably going to hear a lot of the other things we have got to say come together.
Yeah.
But the second point and the second opportunity that I think a course site offers us is making documents available. The idea that you would have the students kind of track down PDFs or have like just a list of links or tell them to just Google it to find it themselves, or that kind of really offers up a couple of pitfalls that I'd really encourage you to go in the direction of using the LMS, because if you send the students out to find a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird somewhere for free or on the internet or whatever, they might be breaking copyright. You don't want to ever encourage students to infringe upon the law by telling students to go use Google to get snippets of a textbook that they should, like that kind of stuff gets really blurry and probably, illegal when it comes to copyright law and issues there with intellectual property. If you take the time with your library staff, with your, whatever you've got, like ProQuest, etc., to get into like scholarly articles and other materials like that. If you take your time to get all that stuff and put it in the LMS, it is licensed, it is appropriately accessible for the students, it is coordinated in one place, and you're removing, this space for the students to steal or do things they don't intend to, or maybe even here's a common thing, at least in some of Josh and my background in studies, like find the wrong version, right? You're sitting there telling them to use this version and they found that version, and they think they're reading it the same way, but they're actually getting a different level of insight because they maybe didn't have the document that you intended them to view. So get it together, because in the digital space, you can put it all in that course site, use your library resources, etc., and it's all legal, it's all compliant, it's all available, and they can have good functional copies that we don't need to print. There's no germs going around on them. They don't get wasted by students who don't use them. The students who do use them can keep them themselves. And hey, if you've ever listened to any of our episodes on annotation and digital library systems, they could keep them for themselves and use them in those contexts.
Yeah. Well, I often get this reaction to some of the stuff when you talk about it. It's like, well, especially in higher ed, I think sometimes a lot of that's viewed as like hand holding. It's like, well, like, why should I provide that stuff to them or do this stuff to them? And again, I keep coming back to the fact that, like, why have we gotten this perspective that, like, making it easier for people to get a hold of the things that they need to learn well is hand holding? Right. Like, they're paying for this.
Right.
Like, help them get to the stuff they need to get to. And I'm not saying, like, if you're doing a research project, you give them all the resources that they need to figure out stuff. Okay, obviously there's a way to teach people good research practices and good stuff like that. Yeah. But when you're recommending resources, or there's a direct resource they need to use for that activity, like, why are we making it harder for them to get to it when you can create an experience where they are literally able to piece by piece go through the path of learning in your course, see it, and access the things they need at the moment. We call it in training, JIT, just-in-time training. It's just-in-time resources. It's just-in-time what they need at that moment.
Right.
Another great example I have of this is, like, I used to have this instructor who we'd come to class and he'd do a whole bunch of stuff, and it was great. But then he would have, like, this section of, like, the residency where, like, he'd recommend all these books that were, like, external resources to what we didn't need to do in the course, which is great. I have no problem with that. I'm all about that. Getting more resources, things that he's found has been useful. But he would literally transport all of these books in a bag and show pictures of them, or like show them to them. And we're all there, like, furiously writing down these resources. Like, we're over here, like, typing them out. We're, like, trying to make sure we remember them. What's that name again? I missed that one.
Could you spell it?
Like, now imagine if he had taken the time to link to, I don't know, a place where you can get these things, like Amazon, and create an interactive page that gives little descriptions of why he's found these resources helpful.
Yep.
That's not hand-holding. He's trying to give some of his wisdom he's had over decades of being in this field, trying to cut back some of the searching that he did for these people who are trying to learn how to engage. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember half the books he said. Why? Because I didn't have time to write down all the things. He had hundreds of books in a duffel bag. Like, what am I supposed to do?
I remember that person. I remember.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, yes. So, but what if it was like a full page in LMS, right? And we get to a section that's all about, in our case, this was, teaching, pastoral degree. So it was what we call commentaries, basically just our versions of, scholarly accepted books on what we're doing. Like, what would it look like to get to a section where he talks about using that stuff, or we're talking about a residency, and he would actually just create a page that links out to the Amazon link, which is exactly what all of us were doing as he's talking about these books, is favoriting them on Amazon, because we're never going to remember all of these things. What would it look like to just link out to those links and give a couple sentences of why those have been useful for him? Then in class, have it in the in-class section of his LMS, right? He can open that up, talk through all that stuff. He can still bring in the books if he wants. I think it's maybe a little overkill, but he can still bring in the books.
That's his workout.
And then
he needs that to get his lifting in.
I love this man, by the way. I just want to emphasize that. But then say, you know what? If you want to remember any of these, go check out this page in the LMS. You can go find them here. With little descriptions of why.
Annotated bibliography.
Full annotated bibliography of what we want, right? And so again, it's making things more accessible for students. Yeah. And right there, that would have been super helpful. And there's a higher chance of students would have got more of those books because they were there and they could reference it, or even take that document outside of class. And when they get to a point that they were researching that topic, look into that page. Oh, I remember in my class, so-and-so provided this page. Let me take a look at this, and he finds that resource on this thing that he recommended, and, go and buy it off of Amazon real quick. Much different experience. So I think it's a huge thing when it comes to making documents available, and I will be done, moaning on about that. So, another place that this is helpful, is making a space for communication. And you throw in kind of learning. And I think that kind of obviously grabs what we're talking about.
Just meaning that it should be in the same, you know what I mean? You don't have to go to this platform for one and this platform for another.
Same area. Yeah, that's true. Like, I think it's just helpful. It's a helpful system. It allows you to connect with your students outside of the classroom. Like, I wish instructors would use their announcement features in these types of sites more often, where they could, post reminders to the students, or where I really see instructors using this well is like they notice that so good example of where I can see announcements tie into actually a formative assessment type is like exit interview type stuff, like class exit tickets.
Yeah.
Where like, we've talked about this before. I love doing stuff like ask a question, like what was most confusing in class or something like that. Go back, review all of that stuff, and then instead of waiting 2 or an entire week till the next class period to talk about that, record a quick video or write out a response to some of the most commonly asked questions and post it in as an announcement in your course site. And then it's there. Yep. And then if a student needs to remember it weeks from now, they don't need to remember what they wrote down. They could go back to the course site and look at your announcements and find where you mentioned that, and remember it.
How beautiful.
And how beautiful. And my wonderful instructors, who I really love, would again often come back to, well, this is kind of a hand-holding feature, and I would say, how many times have you asked me to email you something and you want to go back and look at it? Like, that's
and then how many times have I emailed it to you and you still come back to me like, hey Will, how do I blah 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 blah? Did you search your email for it? And that's actually the point that I had. It like really wanted to drive home as a pitfall of not having this, right? If you're someone who's in the habit of using email as your primary communication and then putting your learning content somewhere else, it is not easy for you or them to find it when the time comes to be found, right? I know if I need something from the students I taught in fall 2020, that's in the Canvas course under the fall 2020 term of section B that I taught. You know what I mean? Like, that's where that content is. Everything I said to those students, every document I have for that course, every assessment I have it's in that darned course, right? If I need to find something I said to a student about that course in my inbox, I have to remember what the email said, and I have to be able to search all the keywords to try and find it.
Or you have to be creating folders in your email for each of these years and classes you did, and some people do.
Right.
Me, but but normal people don't. And the point of this also is for your students, it's all in one spot. Their experience for learning is happening all in that environment, that site, and whatever's happening in the physical classroom if you're also teaching face-to-face.
Right. Right.
And so, like, what that does is it just, I think, gives you a good place to connect to your students on the fly, but tie it directly to the content. And the wonderful thing about these is if you have all your activities and things laid out and resources laid out, students were missing something commonly, you can be like, hey, this is the answer to this. This is going to impact this assignment, or, you can point to the assignment it came from. All of your modern day technology allows you to do that. And you create a seamless experience for your students where they don't have to be rooting around to try to find all of those things.
Right.
They have a learning path that they're progressing in, and that they can be a part of. And so that's where I think it can really enhance the learning. And just what else I was going to say.
To me, it's having those in the same place, keeping it all consolidated, keeping it easy to access, keeping it organized is extremely, extremely helpful for you and for them, right? Once you know that that's the system, you can trust it, and you don't have to kind of go hunting and pecking in 3 or 4 different places to find the content, whether it was a communication, whether it was an assignment, whether it was feedback on an assignment, you just know it's in the course. Go get it. Mm-hmm. The last point for us, and this is kind of an amalgamation still of these different points, right? But making the course timeline functional, and that's Will speak, right? These are definitely Will notes here tonight. What I mean by that is if I make content in week 1, week 2, week 3, and if I put up a syllabus, and if I put up a course schedule, and if I communicate through announcements, but there's not actually a calendar experience in place. So almost every learning management system today is going to let you put in due dates, availability dates, publishing dates, all whatever the terms are, right? But you're going to actually be able to build a calendar into your learning management system. If you have a learning management system that doesn't have a calendar, get a new learning management system. Otherwise, you know what I mean? I know some folks who like to use Google Calendar and Outlook Calendar, and they have all these different things. That's great, but unless you're going to be making Google and Outlook calendars that you're going to share with your students, and you're going to do that every semester, and you've got to make a brand new one and all that kind of stuff, it's not worth your effort. And again, it kind of comes back to communication learning stuff. If you have to go to your email for communications and to your calendar for your calendar and to your LMS for your learning stuff, like you're in 3 different places to deliver one course. Build the calendar into your course. You know, I've seen this in 3 different learning management systems where folks, you know, will put in the materials but not put in the time to put the dates in, or they put the dates in the name of the materials. It's like quiz 4, Friday, October 5th. Well, that's not actually a due date. It doesn't actually create a calendar. It's not something you can reference or the students can reference, right? So take advantage of those due dates and stuff like that. Build them into your system, because, you know, more of the LMSs are getting better today where you can like reuse it next semester. You can kind of like, all right, use the same scheme and push the days if you, that kind of stuff. But even if you don't do that, if at the worst, you just have to add due dates from semester to semester, at least you now and the students are all in one place, and every assignment has a time stamp. You know when to expect it, they can expect it. And it's really easy, I think, to change them from time to time. This is definitely one of those things that falls in line with what Josh is saying. It's not necessarily what I was saying. This is the student's experience thing. It is going to be premier. They can follow the calendar. It'll make sense. They know when and what to expect. But it is more work on your part in one way, right? Like just because you have to create the due dates. But at some point, when you make a course, you have to do this. There is some time in the course creation process, whether you put in your own calendar or if you do a course schedule or whatever, you have to make the dates. Unless you literally just fly by the seat of your pants, which I don't know how you manage to get away with that.
And again, like this is the part I'm talking about. It is, you know, every time this comes into with instructors, the 2 places I see this most often is the dates and when they have to build quizzes or like things like this. There's kind of like this reaction of like, oh, this is so much work compared to what I just do in the syllabus, which is I throw together a table with a calendar of dates on them, and I, make a Word document that they fill out with a Scantron or whatever they, and again, that you're right. It is more work for you up front, but it does create a way better student experience at the end of the day. That static calendar in the syllabus, while it's helpful, does not give them this kind of path of experience with dates and reminders of what's going on. It creates this virtual environment where they are literally seeing the learning path that they are taking day by day being played out in this calendar in the LMS. It's a much better experience, just like quizzes and things like that are a much better experience, I think, for students when they're in this digital space for the most part. But that's more work on your part. It's just reality. Now, it'll save a lot of work down the road. Most, like you said, if an LMS doesn't do this, please go to another one. Let's go somewhere else.
Just switch.
Most of them should have some type of system where you can put in due dates, and then when you copy to a new course, it shifts all of them. So like it's a good experience. And it will eventually be less work down the road. And it does create kind of this thing that I would love to hammer into, and I feel like this is the thing I want to maybe write about or talk about at some point, is the power of showing progression to students. The one thing I think a learning management system or a course site does in a powerful way that you don't get in most other experiences is an actual record of progression in a course in a way that you don't get in just a normal course without it. And it's down to the simple stuff like the due dates and grading systems where they're going to show them their grades as they're going and kind of give this experience of progression and completion, to other stuff that you can do to enhance the learning management system. Right now, I'm excited. Like we're doing some stuff where we're actually putting in, I showed you some betas of this, where we're actually putting in images on each week that shows like a progression bar of where they're at. So when they go through the week, they get through weeks 1, 2, and 3, and it shows them actually in the top bar that they've completed weeks 1, 2, and 3, and they're on week 4, right? So like, it gives me a place to put these visual cues in too. And it wasn't that hard. I just created images with this. Like, and this is where we tried to take it a little bit a step further. There is something so powerful about showing progression, showing them progressing through something when they feel like they've completed something or they're doing something or they're building something for themselves. It motivates them to continue even when the content becomes harder. And we all see this. And that's where I think there's a lot of power in course sites for learning.
Right.
I think it gives you a place to give them an environment to get the things they need at the moment they need them, and visualize the progression, this feeling of finishing a course in a way they don't get as much without it. Like they do, but there's something powerful about the digital medium and showing progression.
Yeah. Well, and the corollary would be if you're doing a face-to-face class, you'd have to give out like a little piece of paper every week, like, all right, this is week 1 stuff. All right, this is week 2 stuff. You know what I mean? Like you'd have to create something physically to make that marker. And now it's just a part of that learning experience every day. Every time they go in the system, they know where they are and it's a part of their experience. Now go for it.
It is just a huge motivator. Like I wish I could get that through to people, is that, like, think about it, from the procrastinator to the not procrastinator to anybody, when you feel like you've done something, you feel better about yourself and it motivates you to do more.
Yeah.
And it is a powerful motivator we should be using in education more often. That can be helpful.
I agree.
Sorry, that's the end of my spiel.
That's good. And this is a lot of knowledge. We get that. This is stuff that Josh and I have seen across hundreds of good and bad courses, and having worked both of us with 100 or 200 different I don't know how many faculty I've worked with now, but like that's just something that's it's our gleaning insights from all these different things. So hopefully this knowledge is useful to you. We know, though, with knowledge that it really comes down to its application. So we hope that you can find a way, really to make this into, a bit of your own wisdom, and then it makes you a little wiser in your practices, because the wiser you are, the more effective you'll be at teaching.
Yeah. I wanted to say the harder you fall, but that's not the motivational thing we wanted to go for,
That's cute. I like that too, but
yeah.
Transitioning to our app of the day, Wizer. We really just kind of want to leave this one. It's a pretty straightforward one, pretty simple. It is more elementary in its visual feeling or visual aesthetic, but I'd like to just say it's kind of like Canva, if Canva and a quiz had a baby. So Wizer is a worksheet application. It's actually, really, if you think in that sense, it's very K-12-y. It's designed to like let you make digital worksheets and stuff like that. So many times folks were just like in the olden days scanning them out of textbooks, or they were recreating them in Word documents, right? And so you were just making them as they could have been made in a physical print form. Wizer lets you integrate YouTube videos. It has clickables, draggables, all these kinds of features that are now inherent to digital context. So you can do an open-ended question. You can have the students do a drawing activity. You can have the students do a reflection activity, a word search puzzle. There's actually a button to import a Canva design, right? Like, so, I wasn't joking. Like, it's very visually appealing. It's visual first, but the idea is that you could have the students do something in a worksheet again, like you always had them do on paper, but with the digital context first. Now, if you already use quizzes, or if you've done a lot of worksheet to quiz conversions, like that's all right. What a lot of quizzes don't have necessarily like the drawing or sorting activities, more the visual stuff, But today you can always put a YouTube video in a quiz. You can put a discussion question in a quiz. There's a lot of things that I think you can usually do with an LMS. This is just a good supplement. I think it's got a couple of options there that you can't get in an LMS, specifically like a word search puzzle. That's very specific. Drawing is definitely, I think, specific to this tool over an LMS.
Something that's really cool, real quick, just like to further emphasize this, like, so I get a lot of worksheets from instructors where I do like they're like breaking down passages and stuff. So like they'll have these worksheets to guide students through the experience. But often the experience right now is they download a Word document, they come into this, they try to figure out where to fill in the blank stuff that they're doing, they fill in these boxes maybe, and if you've ever tried to set templates up in Word, you know that it sucks. And so like
it's not worth it.
But just looking through this right now, somebody created a worksheet where like you have some tasks where they're giving out definitions to different words. There's a fill in the blank paragraph where it actually shows the words that could be in the blanks, and as I type them out, it crosses out the words that I type out. So like as I type out, like it's one of the words is operating. I type out one of the blanks. It crosses it out down below in the word bank for me.
That's cool.
So like it creates this meld of this old school thing that we've used, which is this worksheet thing that I don't think is just K-12. I think higher ed uses it a lot too. It's this idea that students need a guiding template or things to help them guide through an experience, especially if it's a newer practice that they're not used to. That's where I really like using worksheets. If there's a newer kind of writing practice or research practice or something that they need to go through that they need training wheels on in the beginning, to do, a worksheet's really helpful for that. But this gives you an interactive digital place that you can use inside your LMS to create this interesting experience, or inside this course site to create this fun, engaging experience. That they have a lot of tools in here to get to what I was talking about, which is showing progression, kind of this progression of a worksheet. And completing it in a really fun and user-friendly way that I think makes it kind of cool to use them.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that visually appealing experience, right? I have moved into a professional space where my title is to be a learning experience designer. And when I kind of reflect on that, there's a lot to be said for like learning management systems typically being fairly sterile. And why I say sterile is like just maybe like dichromatic. You've got white and gray everywhere, or black and gray everywhere. Like whatever your LMS's like white light color is, it's either a beige or a cream or a gray or something, and then the text color and maybe some like shading on corners and stuff like that. But an LMS is not built to be a graphically beautiful space. They're typically built to be efficient, and hopefully at least moderately appealing or interesting. But this is something where you can kind of bring some pizzazz. You can show some character. You could maybe make the worksheet look like the theme of whatever you're studying, right? And there's I think value in that. There's definitely value in like when it comes to notes and taking notes on handwritten materials, like that people associate maybe the actual space that they were writing on with the information they were learning. So there's some things there that I think you could take with this product that would be useful for your worksheets in a digital context. It is freemium, so the free product has a couple limitations. It doesn't look like it's too bad. It's not like you can only make like 2 worksheets or something like that. Like you can make a good many worksheets. I don't think there's necessarily a limit on that. But you get limited features, and you can't do like private Wizers, right? You can't do a private worksheet, which isn't too much of a big deal unless you've got like, you have to then be concerned for students putting like real data or their names or stuff on them if it's a open worksheet. So be considerate of that as you make the content. But overall, it really delivers as a freemium product, and it's not too expensive on the paid side. One thing I will say is there's definitely some interactions, some experiences in there that are not going to be accessible right off the bat, right? Some of them are just visual. As long as you are working with a picture or a video, you immediately come up to an accessibility concern. So there's some things to address there if you're going to implement it. But you could of course, turn these worksheets into a physical one if you needed to deliver it to, say, a proctor or even a disability support services kind of person to help someone. Like it wouldn't be too hard to, I think, turn it into an accommodation if you needed to go that route.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where I think the advantage of something like this is, again, digital provides an area for you to do something so different. Like, so for example, I'm looking at a worksheet right now somebody did of solving equations, and they have a video that walks through how to solve a certain type of equation, then several worksheet options below that of what the student has to do to complete the activity, then another video to show how to solve another type of equation, and then several examples of that. And they have some options where it's like, hey, match this equation to the problem. And you're like, well, quizzes can do that type of stuff, and you're right. But something that's really cool with this is the matching I'm doing has like a little rope that connects to the thing I'm matching. Like it creates this interactive experience. It's a little bit different with visual media content all in one place, which creates, again, a learning path with resources all in the one area the student needs them.
Right.
And creates an experience where they can practice doing things differently than as if you provided students a link to a video and then they download a document and they click on that document and they do the stuff in the worksheet and then they watch another video and they do that in another worksheet. You can create one singular place that they do all of this stuff. as a practice, which I think is really cool.
In their templates, and this is where I hope you could maybe see the purpose for you as a faculty member, whoever you are, right? I see music notes, like naming notes. I see solving math. I see literature, like Greek mythology. There's examples of people using this in Hebrew or Arabic. There's references to like programming. Like the people are managing to put a lot of different subject matters and languages into this platform. So you could, whatever your subject matter is, I bet you could make an effective worksheet in this space for you and your students. And of course, if you use worksheets through Wizer, I hope you would link it to your course site to make sure that that learning experience is just excellent for you and the students.
Yes. Just a small nerd out moment. I have no idea what time we're at. Oh, cool. Okay. As a guy who does Hebrew, this guy created a Hebrew worksheet. Actually, it looks like it's Arabic, but you can do this with Hebrew. Where like it gives a little bit of instruction. They can write on an answer. They can record an answer right at the same time as well. Do the same thing for multiple options. Select which is a certain kind of case. And then at the bottom, there's even a hand draw section for them to be able to hand write out stuff.
Critical.
Speaking of somebody who's designed courses in this space, who has taken courses in this space, it would have been sick to have a worksheet like this to be able to combine all of that into one area.
Yeah.
So, we're giving our disclaimer. Will and I have not actually used this in an actual learning context yet. We kind of, at least I don't think you have, right?
Nope.
You didn't.
Nope. I got it as a reference from somebody, but no.
Yes. So we got it as a reference from somebody else, but we've done some testing before we did this episode, took a look at what we were doing. I've been playing with it the entire time we're over here as well. It's really cool. It does something very different that, like Will said, it connects with LMSs, so you can put it into your LMS. I think it's a really good freemium model that you can do a lot of stuff with the free version. But even the paid version is not bad. I think it's like, I scrolled too far on the page. Hold on. I'm lost. There we go.
I've got the note here. It's just buried somewhere.
It's only like $5 a month. It's like what, almost $60 a year to do this. It looks like it's only per use. It's like you as a user.
You
it's
as the
not
teacher.
Like per student.
Right. That's pretty good. I like
so
that.
That's a solid deal. I could find a lot of uses for something like this. So again, hashtag not a sponsor. Wizer is not sponsoring us. Although you guys can reach out to us about an interview, that'd be great. But it is a really cool tool that I think would be incredibly useful.
Well, folks, we've held you a little bit longer than normal. We thank you for taking the time with us, as always, in these episodes of the High Tech Podcast. Josh and I are so excited. We are coming to the close of 2021 soon, wrapping up what we are considering Season 1. So we hope you enjoy these last few episodes in the year. And look forward to what we're coming in Season 2 as we consider new ways to open up the conversation with you and more educators. Again, as always, we look forward to ways to harness technology for the physical and digital classroom, and we hope that this is a useful experience for you as you consider ways to improve your spaces. Find us on Twitter at Hightech Podcast. Yes, that's the one. And our website, hightechpod.us. We'll get there eventually, right? Until next time, see ya.
See ya.